Hello there everybody, it is me XFreezerBunny and welcome back to another Sims 4 speed build. So first off, happy November to all of you guys. I missed you guys. How have you all been doing? I know it's been a hot minute since my last video. I'll give you a live update in just a second, but I hope you're all doing well. A lot of things have been happening in my personal life, which I'm gonna get into in a little bit, but first I want to talk to you guys about the build we're doing today. So this is quite possibly one of my favorite builds I've done in a while. I know I say that all the time, but in this build I got to experiment with a lot of new tricks and I'm really excited to show them off. And if you can't already tell, this is yet another apartment build here in San Myshuno. And this is actually the Waterfront luxury apartment, and it is a fully furnished, yes, you heard that right, it's a fully furnished apartment building, which means that there's actually fully furnished apartment units inside. So there's a total of 5 apartments inside of this building, and all of them are fully furnished. And there's different kinds as well. There's 2 studio apartments, there's 2 1-bedroom apartments, and there's 1 2-bedroom apartments, which I'm gonna consider as the penthouse, even though it's technically not really the penthouse, because the penthouse is supposed to be like the topmost floor in the building, or probably like the most expensive unit in the building. But yeah, we'll get into that in just a sec, because this building actually has 5 floors, and if you all know, The Sims 4 does have a limit of the amount of floors you can have in a building, and we're limited to 4 floors. So the 5th floor, which is technically supposed to be the penthouse, is just a facade, so it's kind of like a fake floor just for appearance's sake, but I'm really happy with how everything came together. So because this build is fully furnished, I did have to split it into 2 parts, and I don't know how you guys feel about me splitting up builds into multiple parts, but I thought that that was the only way for me to actually show off all of the things I did without compromising the whole build itself, because if I tried to condense it into just one part, I would have had to edit so much of the build out, and at that point it's like, what's the point of showing you guys the build if literally some of the most important parts of it would be edited out? Because I don't really want to put out like a 40-minute speed build. As much as some of you might actually enjoy that, I just don't think it's worth the time and effort to put out a build that's that long. So I thought it would be a little bit better to just split this into multiple parts. And I think moving forward, I do want to make more apartment builds that are fully furnished. Let me know how you feel about that, because I do have a lot more ideas of similar builds like this, but in like different styles. And I also want to explore like different areas in the world as well. Like I want to do similar apartments like this in more of like an Asian setting or a European setting, or like in a tropical setting, because this build I feel like is more kind of like, I don't know, North American or maybe even European. I definitely see this in like Canada, or maybe like in the UK, maybe like somewhere modern, kind of like beachfront, or maybe not beachfront, maybe like, I don't know, riverfront, if that makes sense. So maybe like Toronto, Vancouver, maybe London, Brighton, something like that basically. But this build was actually inspired by a real life building in Chicago. It's called the Aqua skyscraper. And it's a pretty special building because it's actually the tallest, or one of the tallest buildings that were made by a female architect, Jeanne Gang, who is responsible for the top 2 tallest buildings in the world, which is amazing. And if you don't know, that's a big deal because architecture is a male-dominated field. So whenever, you know, women are breaking boundaries, it's a big deal for all of us. So we should celebrate that, right? Anyway, I was really inspired by that building because I actually did a report on it back in college. For those of you who don't know, I went to college for architecture. I have an architecture degree, and most of my professional work actually revolves around making floor plans for buildings that are very similar to this. So I'm more used to basically designing, you know, high-rise buildings, mid-rise, or like mixed-use developments more so than suburban houses. So I don't know why, I just somehow fell into that part of the industry, I guess, but I'm really enjoying it. Other than the fact that, being in charge of doing technical drawings doesn't really give you a lot of room to be creative, which is why I really rely heavily on creating Sims content to kind of flex my creative side, because I don't really get to do a lot of that in my normal, regular, everyday professional job. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this so far. This building is also really similar to another rabbit hole that we have in The Sims 3. It's one of the building shells that came with The Sims 3 Showtime. If any of you guys remember that. It feels like Showtime came out forever ago, which is insane, because yeah, right after Showtime is when I started actually making YouTube videos, so I feel like I'm such a boomer of YouTube now. By the way, if you hear a lot of background noise in the background, if you hear a lot of traffic noise in the background, please excuse that. I will try to edit the audio to be as quiet as possible. But one of the requests I've been getting a lot of recently is actually to share the tray files of my builds. And I'm actually considering it. If any of you joined the poll that I posted a couple of weeks ago, I'm genuinely consider posting tray files of some of my most requested builds. Unfortunately, because I have hundreds of builds at this point, I don't think it's gonna be possible for me to make tray files of every single one of my builds. I mean, it's gonna be a lot of work, but I'm considering making the tray files available on Patreon. Because if you didn't know, I actually started a Patreon earlier this year. It's a completely optional thing that I started just to share my CC creations. That is also another work in progress, but back to the tray files, I'm considering kind of like making like a compilation or like a Google Docs of all of the tray files of my previous builds and just making them available on there for any of my Patreon supporters. So if any of you have feedback on how I can do that, or if you're interested to, join my Patreon to get the tray files, I guess, please let me know, because at this point I have no idea. I haven't been really keeping up on Patreon and stuff, so it'd be interesting to hear your guys' feedback on that. I'd be more than happy to share the tray files for some of my highly requested builds, but I can't promise I'll be able to share all of the tray files for all of my builds, because that's just gonna be way too much work, and I don't think the payoff's gonna be that good, because I'd rather do something more productive than literally spend hours or even days just exporting all of the tray files and stuff like that for literally 200 plus builds I've done for The Sims 4. So yeah, please let me know what you think about that. Other than that, I do want to touch on some of the news that came out in the Sims community over the past couple of weeks. So the first thing that I want to talk about are scenarios. Now, scenarios were announced a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of talk has been out there on the community about scenarios. I want to know how you guys feel about them, because I'm excited to see how they will implement scenarios in game. I like the aspect of kind of introducing more gameplay. Well, I don't think scenarios are necessarily going to introduce more gameplay, but it's going to make people more, I guess, motivated to do gameplay, because I feel like The Sims 4 really is lacking on gameplay, in my opinion. I feel like it's a lot more better if you're a builder rather than someone who does gameplay, but from what I've seen, scenarios remind me so much of that time period in The Sims 3 when we did a lot of challenges. So if anyone remembers the Midnight Sun Challenge, the Runaway Teen Challenge, or even the Legacy Challenge, I feel like scenarios are kind of like that, but for The Sims 4. And not made by players, because all of those challenges for The Sims 3 that I mentioned were player made. And if I remember correctly, the Sims 4 scenarios are made by EA. And it just made me think how awesome it would be if the scenarios were made by players instead. Because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of creativity in the community out there and a lot of stories that need to be told. So I think it'd be nicer if the scenario was more of an open-ended tool for creators to be able to share their own stories and make their own challenges and quests, basically. But I'm really interested to see how they implement it. And another thing that I want to talk about is actually the recently announced kit, the Blooming Rooms kit, which is really exciting. I don't think I've been this excited for a pack in a good while. And I say that because I feel like The Sims 4 has been definitely lacking in some really good indoor plants. I know that sounds really weird, knowing that we're quite late into The Sims 4's lifespan already, but we need more plants, and I'm happy to see that they're making a kit exclusively for that. So I'm really excited for that, and I already have a bunch of ideas on what I want to do with them, so please keep an eye out for that as well. I've totally rambled over the build, but I do want to talk about some of the more interesting aspects of this build. So I'm using those display pedestals that came with Get Famous to make this beautiful balcony effect that is reminiscent of kind of like the wave design that you would see in the Aqua Tower. Of course, this building isn't as big as the Aqua Tower because we're very limited with what we can do in The Sims 4, but I'm really happy with how all of those different architectural elements came together. And in front, there is this really nice water feature. If you can see to the right hand side, there is a wheelchair ramp because that is very important for me. Whenever I design community lots for The Sims 4 or like really big apartments, I always include a wheelchair ramp because it makes it more realistic. And of course, we are here for the accessibility as well. Even though there's not really that much representation for that in The Sims 4, it's still good to have that detail in my opinion. So other than the apartments that I mentioned earlier, this apartment also has a lot of amenities. So there's a swimming pool and there's also a gym as well. So yeah, it's pretty luxurious in my opinion. And I just want to point out that the balconies right there, you can see they are protruding way out of the building. I don't think that's actually realistic because I feel like the balconies would need some sort of support for them to be able to go out that far. But you know, it's The Sims 4. We can be a little bit creative. Yeah, I'm trying to make that kind of like infinity pool type aspect over here for this pool area. And there's also a little lounge area as well as a parking lot, which is another really important thing that I feel like we don't really see a lot of in The Sims 4, which makes sense because there's no cars in game. But I would really like to have like a car expansion or like kits for cars. I don't know why, I just feel like there's something missing with not having cars in The Sims 4. By the way, I am so sorry if my commentary is all over the place in this build. I have so many things I want to talk about with you guys. I feel like we have a lot of catching up to do, so I'm speaking as fast as I can. And yeah, I'm sorry if I really should have thought about this more before starting recording, but you know, it is what it is. My commentaries aren't scripted, they're mostly off cuff. I do have some bullet points, which is why I'm trying to get to them as fast as I can so that I would be less stressed out. But anyway, one thing that I'm so excited about is Twisted Mexie's Create a World tool for The Sims 4. This new mod is single-handedly making me a lot more excited for the future of The Sims 4, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. I think it's already available on their Patreon at this point, but I'm really excited to check it out for myself. It's gonna be amazing. Create a World was one of my favorite aspects for The Sims 3, and I'm really excited to try it out for The Sims 4. But having said that, I feel like it's now time to give you guys a little bit of a life update. So yeah, it's been a very busy past couple of weeks for me. Basically, I got to take care of a lot of IRL stuff that I've been leaving in the back burner. So this past month, my country has eased its COVID restrictions, so I was able to go out and take care of a lot of paperwork that I've been leaving out because of the whole quarantine and lockdown and all of that stuff. And I've also been doing some Christmas shopping as well because things get expensive the closer we get to Christmas, and we were able to buy some, you know, presents for our relatives in the countryside. because my nieces and nephews are growing up really fast. I haven't seen them in years, and I just went ahead and took the time off to, you know, properly prepare for things that I'm going to be sending over to them. But yeah, I don't know if it's just us in our neighborhood, but we were registered to sign up for our national ID. Maybe it's different for people living in other places in Manila, but yeah, I had to take a day off work for that, which I didn't actually need to because it actually was a pretty smooth process. I was there for like maybe 2 to 3 hours, and I was honestly expecting it to take a lot more time. But yeah, I'm happy I got that over with, because yeah, the whole, you know, bureaucracy and managing your paperwork system in my country is just really stressful. So just wanted to share that with you guys. I do want to point out really quickly that we are doing some parts of this build out of order, because at this point here, when we are furnishing this, the rest of the apartments are already furnished. So I furnished this quite late into the build already, but I feel like I wanted to include this in part 1 because that's when we are doing the exterior, and I wanted to show a little bit of the interior for the common areas. So that's why I just went ahead and edited this to be part of the first part of this build, and the second part is going to be exclusively furnishing for the apartments. I feel like that's more concise, or I feel like that's a more concise way of showing you guys the whole process of this build. I sometimes do that, you know, in some of my builds. Some of them aren't really chronological the way I did it, because sometimes, you know, the way you arrange the build can, you know, make it easier for people who are watching to kind of like process and digest all of the information, especially for a speed build when everything's happening so fast. I'm considering of making more highly edited speed builds, or if you enjoy these more, you know, less highly edited versions, please let me know, because I really don't know what people like to see nowadays. So yeah, one thing that I really do love in this build is the lobby. I feel like those sculptures in the main lobby are a little bit extra, but I think they look really good. Those are wall sculptures from Eco Lifestyle, and they look so good, and I'm happy that we can rotate them with the tool mod so that I can position them a little bit differently to make sense within the design of that lobby. But it's really eye-catching, and I feel like that lobby does look really luxurious. So yeah, and now we're just working on some of the pool area. So yeah, basically we're just putting in some lounge areas. I'm making a day bed right here, and also a nice sitting area, some cabanas, I guess is what you would call them. And on the outside there is also some outdoor dining as well, which I'm using this little food truck type thing from Eco Lifestyle as well, and I'm just putting in some, you know, alfresco dining areas over here. Overall, I feel like it's pretty luxurious. This place has a beautiful view of the bay of San Myshuno. The bridge lights up at night as well, so it looks really good. And yeah, we're just putting in some decorative luxury cars over here in the parking lot, because I feel like this would be the type of car you would see in places like this, I guess. Not that I've ever been to such a luxurious place in my life, but that's what I'm assuming based on what I've seen on TV and on documentaries and all of that good stuff. But anyway, it looks like that is going to be it for this build. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for watching. Part 2 should be up sometime this weekend, so I'll see you guys then. Thank you so much for watching. You all have an awesome day. Enjoy the rest of the video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.